Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. This is Khawaja Hammad and you're watching Global Times Pakistan. Today I have with me journalist Mark Rowley, and the topic we are discussing is the US midterms 2022. Hello, Mark. Thank you for joining me.
No, thank you so much for having me.
Uh,
I appreciate it.
Mark, just coming to straight to the point, just educate what is happening in America because in media reports, a lot of chaos in terms of political instability and in terms of the relationship and the stress that we are seeing in this midterm elections. What are your comments on it?
Well, first of all, the midterm elections historically end up being bad news for whichever party controls the presidency. So when Donald Trump was president, the 2018 midterms swung toward the Democrats. That's generally how that works. The incumbent president loses seats in Congress normally when the midterms happen because there's a level of dissatisfaction with the status quo that transcends whatever time it is. This is different in that there are huge pressures on the United States. And Americans, and I have to tell you this, Khawaja, Americans don't always pay attention to what goes on in the rest of the world, okay? So Americans don't necessarily know and don't necessarily care some of the pressures that are taking place, both financial and ecological. I mean, geez, all of those floods and whatnot in Pakistan and in India, places, most Americans know nothing whatsoever about that. What they care about is inflation on a monthly basis. They care about how much their gasoline is going to cost because most people use cars. That's what they care about. And as a result, they blame, and they're encouraged by the Republican Party to blame Joe Biden for all of those problems, every last one of them. And that's what people think will be reflected in the midterm elections.
Right. So, Mark, just educate us about the points of politics of Joe Biden and the Democrats that they are they're taking to public in this midterms. For example, we have seen protection of the abortion rights. They're cashing democracy, and these recently we have seen that they're talking about economy, economy, economy. When they talk about these points, what do you actually mean about it?
What they mean is on bread and butter issues, they don't like the Biden administration's policies. Now, that being said, the Democrats have done a lousy job at messaging the positives out of the Biden administration. Lowest unemployment rate in my lifetime. People are working, people are trying to pay their bills. Yes, inflation is, most would say out of control. And that translates into higher prices at the grocery store, higher prices in retail outlets, higher prices for gasoline. Now, the war in Ukraine is in part responsible for the spike in gasoline prices, although, and again, this is lousy Democratic messaging, the price of gasoline has been dropping for the last 2-3 months. But most Americans don't hear it enough. They may experience it at the pump, but it's still higher than it used to be, and they consider that Biden's fault. And what happens is it ends up being reflected in the election of members of Congress. Now, I should say, so people understand how this works, the Democrats currently control both houses of Congress, the House of Representatives and the Senate, but they don't control them by much. 5 wins by Republicans in Democratic districts in the House of Representatives shifts control to the Republicans. In the Senate, that number is 1. 1 Democratic loss to a Republican shifts control of the Senate to the Republicans. That's a very, very narrow margin for error. And I have to say, the polling early on was saying over and over and over again that the Democrats were going to lose both houses. Okay. During the summer, and I'm not quite sure all of the factors involved with this, part of it had to do with the Supreme Court gutting Roe versus Wade. the Democrats started to stage a bit of a comeback. But now, and we're getting very close to the election is on November 8th. Now, the swing, and this is just polling, is going back the other way. It's going toward the Republicans. Now, I should say, in fairness, that polls don't always accurately predict the outcome of elections. They just don't. I've seen polling that's had somebody up 12 points and they've lost. So, you have to put that caveat in it because polling can be wrong. And what happens is a lot of operations like 538 takes an average of several different polls and comes up with a composite. But it's just a snapshot at this point. I have to say, Khawaja, I told people when Roe v. Wade was gutted, I told them, and I said this to Democrats, don't expect massive Democratic turnout or having Democrats energized only because of abortion. There are too many other issues that are on the table. And then, during the summer, when the Democrats started doing better, I started second guess myself. I started thinking, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it is, but now it's starting to swing back the other way. And specifically among independent women, not Democrat, not Republican, independent women are starting to swing back toward Republicans. And that's bad news for Democrats.
Mark, you have rightly pointed out, indeed, the contest between Democrats and the Republicans to fight in the House of Representatives and the Senate is very close. So, and the points of politics are quite frustrating for them, especially for the Democrats. And it is clearly visible in the media reports that are popping up in front of us. So, how you see if Democrats lose control in Senate or House of Representatives, what would be the implications of this scene for the President Biden's presidency?
It would make his agenda almost impossible to implement during the last 2 years of his presidency, which would run up until 2024. The minority leader of the House, who would become the Speaker of the House if the Republicans take it, a guy named Kevin McCarthy, has already said that he will disband the January 6th committee that is looking into what happened during the Capitol insurrection. He wants that gone. He never wanted it in the first place, but he got outmaneuvered. And now the Democrats can continue it, but only as long as they control the House of Representatives. The other thing that the Republicans have promised to do is to look into some elements of Biden's personal situation, specifically the situation with his son, Hunter, because they've been looking for him for ages, and they really haven't had much to go on. But that doesn't mean that if they control the mechanisms of power in the House of Representatives, that they're going to end up going tooth and nail after Hunter Biden. There's all kinds of allegations. He benefited from this. He traded off his father's name, all of that stuff. That all becomes an open investigation. What the Republicans have promised to do is replicate what the Democrats have done to the Republicans with regard to January 6th and some other issues. So the shoe would truly, at that point, be on the other foot, and Biden wouldn't be able to get the time of day done in the Congress.
Mark, when Biden came into power and Democrats won the election, a theory popped up in the media about the succession of President Biden, because they were saying because of his age, he won't be able to run for his second term of presidency. And there were theories that he will be out in 2 years and Kamala Harris will succeed him or will be promoted as the President of the United States. Do you see this happening in coming year or coming months?
Not unless Joe Biden gets sick. Now I will say, in public appearances, he doesn't always look his best. Let me put it that way. But I know of no physical ailment that would preclude him serving these last 2 years. And he's not going to give it up. If that's what you're asking, if he's going to give it up before 2024, no, he won't do that unless unless he cannot continue as president. Then Kamala Harris would be president, but she faced the same issues that he faced. The Congress is not going to give Kamala Harris an inch if the Republicans control it. Not going to happen.
So, in your opinion,
And by the
Kamala
way,
Harris don't
there
have
are
that much influence to be the. In your opinion, I'm asking that you don't think that Kamala Harris has that much influence on in the Democrats that she should be the next candidate of presidency.
well, if he leaves, by law, she becomes president. If he leaves before 2024, she automatically, because she's vice president, she becomes president. Then the next step is to name a vice president. So that's by law. Now, the question of 2024 is an open question. A lot of people thought Biden would only run for one term and serve one term. She would be the logical person to succeed him, but it's not a guarantee. I can tell you that right now. It is not a guarantee that she's going to take his place if he decides not to run. Now, he may just suck it up and say, hey, you know what? I am going to run for a second term. But he is right now personally unpopular, much more unpopular than he was when he won in 2020.
Unpopular in United States or unpopular in the Democrats?
Unpopular in the United States and wildly unpopular among Republicans. Democrats are sticking with him. Don't get me wrong. Democrats are not jumping ship with Joe Biden. They do, some of them criticize him for certain things he's done and for certain things he's not done. But by and large, they're going to close ranks if he decides he's going to run for another term.
Thank you, Mark. Now, coming to a conclusion, I'll ask you to just comment. What is your prediction about the U.S. midterms 2022?
Okay, I got a few things that and this is, I don't want to be too inside baseball. You know, in other words, start talking about stuff that people in Pakistan or wherever won't know that much about. But there are certain states in the U.S., 50 U.S. states, there are certain states that are going to determine the outcome of the midterm elections. And that is control of the House and Senate. In Georgia, it's Reverend Raphael Warnock, Senator Raphael Warnock, against Herschel Walker, who was an ex-football star. In Pennsylvania, it's a guy named Fetterman, John Fetterman, who's lieutenant governor now, against Dr. Mehmet Oz. He's a nationally known doctor and celebrity. He used to have a television talk show. In Arizona, it's a guy named Blake Masters, who is a consistent denier of the 2020 election results, even now, 2 years down the road. He's running against the incumbent Mark Kelly, who was a former astronaut whose wife, Gabrielle Giffords, was shot and nearly killed in an attack while she was serving in Congress in 2011. Kelly's been leading in the polls. And the final linchpin is Wisconsin, where there is an incumbent senator by the name of Ron Johnson, who at first said he was going to quit, that he was not going to run for re-election. Then he changed his mind. And he voted, for example, against certifying Joe Biden's win 2 years ago. He downplayed the January 6th insurrection. And here's the killer. He even suggested using mouthwash to cure COVID. I'm serious about this. He actually advocated for that. Yet, recent polling has him beating his opponent, Mandela Barnes. So that's going to be an issue. And then there are a host of races, which, by the way, the Democrats are pouring money into. These are districts in Congress, not the Senate, but in Congress, where the districts are smaller. Because the Senate, you represent the whole state. In Congress, you represent about 700,000 people in an individual district. The Democrats are pouring money into districts that Joe Biden won just 2 years ago, because the Republicans are starting to make some inroads, according to the polls, in some of those districts, in places like New York, in places like New Jersey, which are solidly what they call blue states, states that usually go for the Democrats. And now it appears as though their grip, I should say, on the part of Democrats, it seems to be slipping. And the Republicans have successfully, and I hate to say this, but I got to be objective. The Republicans have successfully brought home the message that economic woes like gas prices, inflation, and that sort of thing are the fault of the Democrats. And they've also tied him into the crime problem because there are certain cities where there are, rising crime rates. They've tied the Democrats, and this has a huge effect in Congress. They've had the Democrats saying, defund the police and all these sorts of things. The Republicans have been able to Velcro some of those things to the Democrats. Now, you asked me a question. I'm going to give you my best opinion on this. Barring a last minute surge for Democrats, I think they're going to lose both houses. I really do. Because I think they've had some missed opportunities. They have not cultivated the black vote in cities and districts across the country. And if black folks don't turn out, states like Georgia and Wisconsin and Pennsylvania, where you have substantial numbers of black people, if they don't turn out, those Democratic candidates are sunk.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for your time and giving your expert analysis with us, because it really means a lot, because you have actually cleared the confusion in our minds that the Democrats are really in poor condition and poor situation. So let's see how far they manage to control the House of Representative and the Senate that comprises the Congress. So thank you, Mark.